It was a crisp October evening in 1917 when the echoes of revolution began to stir in Petrograd. The masses, fed up with the hardships of war and the deepening instability of Russia, had gathered. The streets were teeming with anger and hope, a volatile mix. Lenin's Bolsheviks, poised to strike, had planned their assault with meticulous care. Armed with revolutionary fervor, they seized key points in the city, knocking out the Provisional government's defenses. But something went wrong, as Lenin, surrounded by a handful of his closest supporters, made his way to the Winter Palace. The seemingly inevitable success of the revolution faltered. The Bolshevik soldiers, fresh from an initial wave of success, began to hesitate, the echoes of gunfire growing distant. A strategic blunder, perhaps an unexpected betrayal, led to chaos. The Provisional government's forces regrouped, quickly cutting off the Bolsheviks' escape routes. The Winter Palace, instead of becoming the symbol of a new dawn, became the scene of a crushing defeat. Lenin was caught, his revolution in ruins. As dawn broke over Petrograd, the city awoke to a disheartening reality. The October Revolution had failed, and the Bolsheviks, once full of fiery promises, were now prisoners of a regime determined to restore order at any cost. Like and subscribe for more. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell for more history documentaries. The immediate consequences: the capture of Lenin and the Bolsheviks. The capture of Lenin and his inner circle would have been a monumental event in Russian history. The Bolshevik leaders, including Leon Trotsky, Anatoly Lunacharsky, and others, would likely have been rounded up and imprisoned swiftly. Lenin, a figurehead of revolution, would have faced trial, and the government would have used this as an opportunity to make an example of him. The Provisional government, in a desperate bid to show strength, would have likely executed Lenin, Trotsky, and other key figures to discourage further rebellion. The momentum for revolution would have been decisively halted, and the Bolshevik ideology, at least for the time being, would have been crushed. Public reaction would have been one of shock, and perhaps even disbelief. But with the defeat of the Bolsheviks, the political vacuum would not have lasted long. The collapse of the Provisional government. The Provisional government, though now secure in its immediate power, was a weak and unstable institution. Despite the failure of the October Revolution, the Russian people still faced severe hardships. World War I was ongoing, food shortages were rampant, and the people were disillusioned with the current leadership. The Provisional government would have been left with no clear way forward. Though they had survived the Bolshevik threat, they still faced opposition from multiple sides. The working class, though temporarily subdued, was still simmering with discontent. The army, disillusioned by years of war, might have turned on the government. The failure to address the people's grievances could have led to mass protests and uprisings, ultimately leaving the government in a precarious position. Could the Provisional government have weathered the storm? Possibly, but only if they managed to establish more solid political legitimacy and quickly implement reforms. But their failure to maintain popular support made their collapse almost inevitable. The return of the Tsarist Empire, a possibility? One plausible scenario in this alternate timeline is the potential return of the Tsarist monarchy. After the February Revolution earlier that year, Tsar Nicholas II had been overthrown, but the monarchy had never fully lost its influence. The Russian aristocracy, the military, and segments of the public still yearned for the return of the old order. With the failure of the Bolshevik Revolution, Russia could have seen a push for the restoration of the monarchy. Some factions in the Russian military and aristocracy were still loyal to the idea of a Tsarist state and the absence of a strong, unified republican movement could have paved the way for the return of a Tsar. Perhaps a new Tsar, or even the reinstatement of Nicholas II's son, could have taken the throne. This restoration would have had profound implications. The military would have been united under a monarch, and Russia could have refocused its energies on winning the war. However, it would also have kept the deeply rooted inequalities of Tsarist rule intact, meaning the same struggles that led to revolution would likely resurface in the future, perhaps in a more violent form. A democratic, non-socialist republic, a shifting vision. Another possibility is the establishment of a democratic, non-socialist republic, akin to the French or American models of governance. With the failure of the Bolsheviks and the collapse of the Provisional government, a new wave of reformist intellectuals, liberals, and moderates could have seized the moment to push for a democratic state. A more stable republic could have emerged, potentially with free elections, civil liberties, and a constitution. The Duma, the Russian legislative body, might have been revitalized as a key institution of governance. This new government would need to distance itself from both the Tsarist autocracy and the Bolshevik ideology, focusing on building a new political system with greater democratic participation. However, this vision would have come with its own difficulties. Russia's political culture had never been truly democratic, and the country was still deeply divided by class and political ideologies. Would the factions that had fueled the revolution simply fade away, or would they continue to fight for their vision of the future? The likelihood of continued political instability was high, and it's possible that a series of weak, unstable democratic governments could have emerged before eventually giving way to authoritarian rule. Civil war and regional separatism, a nation divided. Regardless of whether Russia veered toward monarchy or democracy, the failure of the October Revolution would not have meant a smooth return to stability. The country was divided by deep regional, ethnic, and ideological lines. The peasants in the countryside, frustrated by years of war and hardship, might have risen in violent opposition to any form of central authority that failed to address their needs. Similarly, ethnic minorities in the periphery of the Russian Empire could have sought greater autonomy or independence. If these tensions had erupted, it's possible that Russia could have descended into a prolonged civil war. The collapse of the Bolshevik Revolution would have left the country ripe for internal conflict, with different factions, loyalists to the Tsar, Republicans, anarchists, and even foreign powers seeking to control the future of the nation. Regional separatism, particularly from the Caucasus, Ukraine, and Central Asia, could have splintered Russia into smaller, more manageable entities. Conclusion: a different Russia, a different world. If Lenin's October Revolution had failed, Russia's 20th century history would have looked profoundly different. The Tsarist monarchy could have returned, or perhaps given way to a republican government. But either way, Russia would have faced significant challenges in creating a stable political system in the wake of revolution, war, and foreign influence. The revolution's failure would have only delayed, not eliminated, the broader questions about Russia's political future. In this alternate timeline, Russia may have avoided the horrors of Stalin's purges and the totalitarian rule that would come to define the Soviet Union. But the scars of war, revolution, and social upheaval would have remained, and perhaps a different form of authoritarianism would have emerged. Would Russia have been able to build a democratic society or a prosperous, stable nation? The possibilities are as complex and uncertain as the events that could have unfolded. History is shaped by moments of crisis, and the October Revolution was one of those defining moments. A failed revolution would have altered the course of history, not just for Russia, but for the entire world. Thanks for watching.